If someone said to you, hey, you go to Derry, right? Tell me about your church. What would you say? Maybe you talk about worship, about the music that fills this space, about voices or bells or brass raised in praise. Maybe you'd mention the mission work, scholarships in Sargoda, building houses in the Dominican Republic, meals at the racetrack. Perhaps you talk about the way we practice friendship here, Terrific Tuesdays, small groups, fellowship circles, where the gift of community is woven together week after week. Or maybe you tell them about the children, the way they sing and ring and play drums, the way they learn about God together with such joy. You might mention the youth who participate in puppets or music, who gather on Sundays for fellowship, go on mission trips that stretch their faith in new directions. Maybe you'd say something about the compassion of the deacons, meal train, shawl ministry, home communion carried tenderly to those who cannot be here. Maybe you talk about picnics, the corn roast, square dancing, chili cook-offs, concerts through Arts Alive. Or maybe you'd simply say, Derry is a community of ordinary but caring people living toward God's promised day. A day we have never seen, a day hard to imagine, but a day we trust because it rests on the love of God. And so together, we do the good we can. If someone asked you to tell them about Derry, what would you say? Moses faced that question in his own way. After 40 years of wilderness wandering, after the manna and the murmuring, after the long nights and the desert dust, Moses gathered the people one last time before they crossed into the promised land. His farewell sermon was so long it fills the entire book of Deuteronomy. You thought my sermons were long. But Moses himself never enters the promised land. Instead, God takes him to the top of Mount Nebo. From there, Moses looks out and sees what he has spent his whole life moving toward. Gilead as far as Dan, Judah all the way to the western sea. God says, there it is, Moses, everything I promised. It's true, all of it. Moses spent his entire life pointing toward a promise he never fully reached. In his last moment, he saw enough to know that everything he had staked his life on was real, was true. I don't know about you, but that's why I give myself to the church, my time, my talent, my treasure, because here and there, now and then, I get a glimpse of the promised day. Sometimes in worship, sometimes in a session meeting, sometimes on a youth trip, sometimes when I hear from a child in Sargoda who can go to school because of your generosity. In those moments, it's as if the ground beneath me falls away and I'm standing on Mount Nebo and I hear God whisper, see, it's true. Everything I promised you, it's true. Do you ever have those moments? Maybe when you're delivering Meals on Wheels, maybe when you're singing a special anthem, maybe in a fellowship group when you're praying together. In those moments, you just get the sense God is here. And I can get a vision of what this world is supposed to be like, surrounded by these people, in this moment of song, in this moment of prayer, in this moment of mission. Moses called it the promised land. Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven. That day when justice rolls down like water, swords are beaten into plowshares. The day when hungry bellies are filled and children grow up safe, neither to be destroyed nor destroyers. We have not reached that day. But sometimes, by God's grace, we get a glimpse. Do you ever catch those glimpses? To know it's true. All of it. Reminds me of a scene from Star Wars, The Force Awakens. Rey, a young girl, has only heard rumors of the old days, stumbles onto the Millennium Falcon. There she meets Han Solo, now older, weathered, and she asks if all those old stories of Jedis, the legends, the hope, are real. And this is what he says.
The Jedi were real.
I used to wonder about that myself. Thought it was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. A
magical power holding together good and evil, the dark side and the light.
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny.
Crazy thing is, it's true. All of it. The Force, the Jedi. It's all true.
That's what it's like in the church. We live toward a day we've never fully known. We've heard the old stories, the legends, the hope, and now and then we catch a glimpse, and God whispers, and God reminds. It's true, all of it. For God so loved the world that God gave God's only Son. But let's be honest, those glimpses don't always come with fireworks. Love is powerful, but its victories are often fragile and modest. I think of the parable of the sower. We talked about the story in September, how we're called to trust the seed, trust the gospel in all circumstances. In Mark's telling, the good soil yields 30, 60, 100-fold. But Matthew retells it differently. He reverses the order, 100, 60, 30. Why? I used to think maybe he was doing what I used to do when I was a kid in school and you didn't want to plagiarize something. You just changed a few words in the order. That doesn't work, by the way, but I thought it did. Maybe Matthew's just trying to go, I'm not going to copy Mark completely. I'll just reverse the order. No, I think he had more in mind. I think Matthew wants us to notice the small victories. The modest harvests still matter. Ministry is like that. Sometimes you see the 100-fold. Sometimes you see the 30. Sometimes you see the 2. Sometimes love feels small, but it's never wasted. Over the last few weeks, we've heard from Reinhold Niebuhr how he must be saved by love. Last week, he talked about how he must be saved by faith. He also wrote, "Nothing worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope." And I think I understand that. Much of ministry feels like planting seeds we will not live to see bloom, yet we trust the seed. We trust the promise. At Derry, sometimes we do see the 100-fold. Sometimes God's work is so palpable it leaves us breathless. But often it's the quieter victories. A child cared for, a meal delivered, a song sung, a prayer spoken, a seed of hope planted, one scholarship given. All of it matters. For more than 3 centuries, this church has proclaimed God's word, shared God's love, practiced God's justice, and our community needs it still. Families still struggle with hunger. Children fall behind in school. Health care is hard to access. The gap grows between those with abundance and those with little. In the face of such need, our call is clear. Sow love, do justice, share compassion. A couple weeks ago, I was in Pakistan. We visited the school this congregation helped build. I spoke with students who can study, who can live in safety, who can dream of futures that once seemed impossible. We talked to teachers who were so committed to the work of these schools, who saw the transforming power in these children, who were so grateful for the opportunity not just to have a school, but to have a home and a community. They shared with us one morning these handwritten notes, all of them different. I want to just read one of these that one of the children wrote. And they did a very good job in all the calligraphy. I wish I had that good a handwriting, but I'll read this to you. It says, and this is to you, to the church. They wanted us to share. It says, "To the hearts that lifted our dream, every big journey begins with a quiet moment, a moment when someone believes in you even before you believe in yourself. For us, you were that moment. Your kindness became the strength beneath our uncertain steps. You didn't just offer support, you opened doors to possibility. You turned maybe into yes, and someday into today. This letter is the reflection of everything words can't fully say. That kindness you gave us will keep moving forward through us with hearts full of love, students whose dreams you helped rise. That's just one of the letters they wrote to you, because through you they caught a glimpse of the promised land. And for many, it feels like they're living in it because of what you give and what you do. Being there in the midst of often showering rose petals and children singing Psalm 136, Shukraya Yehovah. You may think all that happened in Sargota, but see, I'm convinced we were standing on Nebo and God was whispering, look, everything I promised you is true. It's right there in front of you. It's true. All of it. Of course, when we look at the world, the need feels overwhelming. We may feel small, unsure that we can make a difference, but that's where Jesus' parable speaks again. Trust the seed. Sow love wherever you can. Love is a vulnerable strength, but it is real. And in God's patient hands, love will win. That's why we say here at Derry, we will do the good we can do. And in Pakistan, they say, do your best, and God will do the rest. We will be sowers. We will sow seeds of love. We sow out of what we have, everything, everywhere, and always, because we believe it makes a difference. We trust it makes a difference. Niebuhr said, nothing worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Hope is why we sow. Hope is why we give. Hope is why we love. And hope is why your gift matters, because here, your generosity is more than a donation. It's a seed planted in the soil of God's promise. It is helping us live toward the day when God's kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus told us, trust the seed. Share the word. Sow the power of love anywhere and everywhere you can. Do the good you can do. It won't always work the way we want, but sometimes it makes all the difference. And sometimes God can use a small gesture to change everything, like a scholarship for a child, a school for a community, a meal for someone who's lonely. So if someone asks you, tell me about Derry, what would you say? You could talk about the worship, the mission, the children, the music, the shawls, the picnics, the prayer. Or maybe you tell them it's a place where people are cared for. Perhaps you would say it's a place where people endeavor to be honest in a culture of deceit. Or maybe you would tell them it's a community that celebrates beauty in a world that's so often broken. Or maybe you would tell them it's a community being saved by hope. For we are living toward a promised day, a day when justice will roll down like waters, a day when swords will be beaten into plowshares, a day when all God's children will be treated as God's children, neither destroyers nor destroyed. The needs of the world are overwhelming, and we feel small because the only power we have is to do the good we can do with and through and for love. And love is a tender power. It is a vulnerable strength, and our victories are often modest. But at Derry, we will keep sowing the seed and keep trusting that holy love. We will do the good Derry can do, share the love that is ours to share, the love that shapes us. And here and there, now and then, we will find our feet firmly planted on Nebo, and God will whisper, see, it's true. All of it. Everything I promised. Love and hope and joy and community and strength, all of it is true. And you will catch a glimpse of the promised land. Thanks be to God.